You know, I once sat across from a 92-year-old woman, sharp as a tack, eyes full of light, voice steady like a woman who had lived through every season life had to offer. And let me tell you, when someone's lived that long, you don't talk, you listen. You lean in. Because wisdom has a voice, and it never shouts, but it always speaks. Wisdom is the shortcut most people ignore. Isn't that something? We live in a world where people will stand in line for hours for the latest phone, spend years chasing degrees, spend decades building wealth, but when it comes to wisdom, real, time-tested, life-shaping wisdom, most folks will walk right past it. The truth is, wisdom doesn't scream. It doesn't beg for your attention. It sits quietly waiting for you to slow down long enough to listen. That 92-year-old woman told me, plain and simple, you can spend your whole life learning by experience, or you can humble yourself and learn from someone else's. And that hit me because we've been conditioned to believe experience is the greatest teacher, but the real secret is wisdom is the best teacher, and experience is the most expensive. You don't have enough time to make every mistake yourself, to fall into every trap, to learn every lesson the hard way. God didn't design life that way. That's why he gave us parents, mentors, elders, pastors, people whose pain has already paid the tuition for the lesson you're trying to learn. I've watched men ignore wisdom because they thought they were too smart, too grown, too self-made to take advice. And I've watched those same men pay a price for lessons they could have gotten for free. Wisdom isn't always wrapped in a fancy package. Sometimes it comes from the mouth of a grandmother sitting on her front porch. Sometimes it shows up in the quiet nudges of the Holy Spirit. Sometimes it's buried in the pages of a book collecting dust on your shelf. But if you don't slow down to seek it, you'll spend your life spinning in circles, repeating the same mistakes, mistaking movement for progress. I remember her saying most people spend the first half of life learning and the second half wishing they'd learned sooner. That's why the wise don't wait. They don't let pride or ego get in the way of growth. They ask questions. They lean in. They learn from every source God puts in front of them because wisdom is a multiplier. It will save you time, save you heartbreak, save you from pouring your energy into dead ends. The 92-year-old woman had seen entire generations rise and fall. She'd watched trends come and go. And through it all, the same truth remained. Wisdom outlasts it all. You can have talent, but without wisdom, you'll waste it. You can have money, but without wisdom, you'll lose it. You can have opportunity, but without wisdom, you won't recognize it when it's right in front of your face. So the real question isn't whether wisdom is available. It is. The question is whether you'll humble yourself enough to seek it and whether you'll be wise enough to apply it before life forces you to. Because life has two ways of teaching you, through wisdom or through regret. And one of those is a whole lot easier to live with. Life is a series of choices, not chances. That's something the 92-year-old woman told me, and it has stuck to my bones ever since. You see, too many people go through life waiting for a break, waiting for luck, waiting for the right moment, waiting for somebody else to give them permission to start living fully. But the truth is, your life isn't a lottery. It's not built on luck. It's built on choices. Every day you are either stepping toward the future you want or drifting further away from it. Not by chance, but by choice. She told me, young man, every day you wake up, God hands you two gifts, breath and choice. What you do with them shapes the man you become. And I've never forgotten that because we live in a culture that loves to talk about circumstances. Who did us wrong? Who didn't give us an opportunity, what the economy's doing, what our past looks like. But that wise old woman, she didn't waste her time blaming her circumstances. She focused on her choices. You can choose to forgive, or you can choose to carry bitterness like a backpack full of bricks. You can choose to learn, or you can choose to stay stuck in the same cycles. You can choose to take a risk on the vision God placed inside you, or you can choose to let fear talk you out of it. You can choose discipline, or you can choose distraction. But either way, it's a choice. And the crazy part is most people think small decisions don't matter, but the little choices you make today are shaping the big outcomes you'll face tomorrow. You don't end up with a strong, godly character by accident. It's the result of daily choices to do what's right, even when it's hard. You don't build a loving marriage by luck. It's a choice to communicate, to forgive, to serve, to show up. You don't raise wise children by chance. It's the steady, intentional choice to lead them with love and correction. And you don't wake up successful, fulfilled, or impactful by accident. It's a result of one faithful decision after another, stacked over time. That woman had lived long enough to see that life doesn't hand you what you deserve, it hands you what you choose. And God, in his infinite wisdom, gave us the gift of free will, not so we could drift through life like leaves in the wind, but so we could stand rooted, intentional, and bold in the face of every opportunity and every obstacle. So the real question isn't whether life is fair. The real question is, are you making the kind of choices that lead to the life you were designed to live? Because the future doesn't fall on you like rain. The future is built by the bricks of today's decisions. And every day you get to choose, will I rise or will I settle? Will I grow or will I make excuses? Will I trust God's plan or will I lean on my own understanding? Your choices, not chances, are the authors of your destiny. The relationships over riches. That was one of the deepest truths that 92-year-old woman shared with me. And it was clear, those weren't just words, they were the wisdom of a life fully lived. She didn't speak from theory, she spoke from experience, from years of watching people chase wealth like it was the end-all, be-all, only to realize too late that money can buy comfort, but it can't buy connection. Money can build a house, but it can't make it a home. Money can fill your wallet, but it can't fill the emptiness of a lonely heart. She told me, I've seen more rich men die poor in spirit than poor men die rich in love. And that statement sat heavy on me because in this world, we're trained to believe that success is measured by numbers, the size of your bank account, the square footage of your house, the horsepower in your car. But when the clock starts winding down, nobody ever asks for their accountant. They ask for their family. They ask for their friends. They ask for the people who loved them and the people they loved back. That woman taught me that relationships are the real wealth of life because when everything else fades, and it will, the love you gave and the love you received will still echo. People won't remember you for what you had. They'll remember you for how you made them feel. They'll remember if you showed up when it counted. They'll remember if you listened when they were breaking. They'll remember if you gave more than you took. And she made it plain, if you want to know how wealthy you really are, count the people who would cry at your funeral, not the dollars in your pocket. Because relationships are the only thing you can invest in that will outlast you. You can leave behind a fortune, but if you die alone, you've lived bankrupt. I've met men who spent their whole lives building businesses, chasing promotions, working 80-hour weeks, only to retire and find themselves surrounded by four walls and no one who knows their heart. And I've met people who lived modestly, but were rich beyond measure because of the love and community they cultivated along the way. Relationships are God's design for human thriving. Iron sharpens iron. Community uplifts the broken. Love restores the wounded. Connection reminds you that you were never created to walk this journey alone. The truth is, the right relationship can open a door money never could. The right mentor can save you from a lifetime of mistakes. The right friend can pull you out of a pit your bank account couldn't buy your way out of. So don't get so caught up chasing things that you lose the people who matter. Because at the end of the day, the cars will rust, the money will fade, the titles will be forgotten, but the lives you touched and the hearts that touched you, that's the only wealth you get to carry into eternity. That's the kind of wealth the 92-year-old woman had, and that's the kind of wealth worth building starting right now. Pain is a priceless teacher. That was one of the things the 92-year-old woman said to me that struck my soul like lightning, because we live in a world that tries to avoid pain at all costs. We've got pills for it, distractions for it, escapes for it, but the truth is, there's no shortcut around it. Pain is part of the process, and if you let it, It will shape you into the kind of person comfort never could. She sat there, wrinkles like the rings of an ancient tree, every line on her face telling a story of something endured, something overcome. And she looked at me and said, the strongest people I've ever known weren't the ones who had it easy. They were the ones who learned how to stand up after life knocked them flat. You see, pain has a way of teaching you lessons success can't. Success might celebrate you, but pain will stretch you, refine you, strip away the things you thought you needed, and leave you standing in your true strength. I've seen people try to run from it, to numb it, to hide behind fake smiles and empty busyness, but all they did was delay the lesson. Because pain doesn't come to destroy you, it comes to develop you. It teaches you patience when you want everything in a hurry. It teaches you compassion when you've been broken. It teaches you humility when your pride has puffed you up too high. It teaches you the value of peace when you've walked through the storms of life. That woman told me every scar I've got tells a story of a battle I thought I wouldn't survive, but I did. And that's the beautiful thing about pain. It leaves proof. Scars are not signs of defeat. They're signs that you made it through. And the wisdom she carried wasn't born in easy seasons. It was forged in the fire. It was pain that taught her to pray deeper. It was pain that taught her to trust God more fully. It was pain that showed her where her real strength came from, and it wasn't her bank account or her intelligence, it was her faith. Sometimes God will allow the storm not to sink you, but to strengthen you. Sometimes he'll let the pressure rise, not to crush you, but to shape you into someone who can handle the blessing that's coming next. Because the truth is, growth doesn't happen in the comfort zone. It happens in the stretching, in the struggle, in the surrender. It happens when your heart is breaking, but you choose to believe anyway. It happens when your world is shaking, but you choose to stand on his promises anyway. So don't despise the pain. Don't curse the process. Let it teach you. Let it prepare you. Let it sharpen your perspective, because when you look back like that 92-year-old woman did, you won't remember the ease, but you'll remember the endurance. You'll remember the way pain turned you from a worrier into a worshiper, from a doubter into a believer, from a survivor into a testimony. Pain will teach you who you really are, and even more, it will show you who God really is. Live with legacy in mind. That was the kind of wisdom the 92-year-old woman spoke, not as some pretty quote for a coffee mug, but as the hard-won truth of a lifetime. When she said those words, it wasn't casual. It was clear that everything she had done, every decision she had made in her later years wasn't about the moment. It was about the mark she would leave long after her time on earth was done. She told me most people spend their lives stacking up things that time will erase, but a wise person spends their life planting seeds that will outlive them. And that hit me, because too many folks are so busy trying to build a life that looks good, they forget to build a life that does good. You see, your legacy isn't what you leave for people. The world tells us to chase success, titles, trophies, and comfort, but none of those things stand the test of time. The car you're so proud of, one day it'll be scrap metal. The house you sacrificed your health to buy, one day somebody else will live in it. The bank account you stressed over for years, one day it'll have someone else's name on it. But the lives you touched, the values you lived by, the faith you passed down, the kindness you sowed into the hearts of others, those are the things that never fade. Those are the things that ripple through generations. She looked at me and said, I'm 92 and I've learned the hard way. You don't get to choose how long you live, but you do get to choose what kind of impact you make while you're here. And that's the question every man and woman ought to ask. What am I building that will outlast me? Are you pouring your energy into things or into people? Are you investing in your character or just your comfort? Because a real legacy isn't built in a day, and it isn't built by accident. It's built by intention, by living each moment like it matters, because it does. And here's the truth. One day, somebody will stand over your grave and sum up your entire life in a few words. Your choices today decide what those words will be. Will they say, you loved well? Will they say you served others? Will they say you stood for truth, lived with integrity, inspired the people around you? Or will they struggle to remember anything beyond what you owned? That 92-year-old woman wasn't rich by the world's standards, but she was wealthy in all the ways that count. Her words, her example, her wisdom, they had outlived her youth, her strength, even some of her friends. And long after her voice is gone, the lessons she planted are still growing in the lives of people like me. So the question is simple. Are you living for now, or are you living for your legacy? Because when your time comes, you won't wish you spent more hours at the office or more money on things. You'll wish you spent more time making a difference, loving deeply, serving faithfully, and walking with purpose. That's the kind of life worth living. That's the kind of legacy worth leaving. Gratitude is the secret to joy. That was the quiet but powerful truth that 92-year-old woman lived and breathed every single day. When she said it, she didn't say it like a motivational quote or a line from a book. She said it like a woman who had weathered storms, lost loved ones, seen hard times, and still chose to wake up every morning with a heart full of thanks. She told me, gratitude won't change your circumstances, but it will change how you walk through them. And let me tell you, that's wisdom you can build your life on. Because the truth is, there are people who have everything money can buy, and yet they're still miserable. And there are people who have very little, yet their hearts overflow with peace and joy. The difference isn't what they have, it's what they focus on. She taught me that gratitude shifts your eyes from what's missing to what's present. It shifts your heart from complaint to contentment. It's easy to say you're grateful when the sun is shining and the bank account is full, but real gratitude shows up in the dark, in the hard, in the waiting. Real gratitude is when you can thank God not just for the blessing, but for the lesson. Not just for the open doors, but for the closed ones that protected you. Not just for the mountaintops, but for the valleys where you learned to pray, to trust, and to grow. I watched her sit in that old rocking chair, a body worn thin by the years, a life marked by both loss and love, and yet her words were never bitter. They were sweet, seasoned with grace. She would say, every morning I wake up, I find one thing to thank God for. Some days it's big, some days it's small, but I always find it. That's a practice most people overlook, but it's the kind of habit that will change the entire atmosphere of your life. You can either live your life counting your problems or counting your blessings. One will make you a prisoner of frustration. The other will set you free. Gratitude isn't denial of hard times. It's defiance against despair. It's choosing to believe that God is still good even when life isn't easy. It's the quiet strength of a heart that refuses to be shaken by circumstances because it stands on unshakable faith. And gratitude isn't just for your own soul. It overflows. A grateful person lifts the room when they enter it. A grateful person inspires others to look up, to slow down, to appreciate the people around them. Gratitude reminds you that no matter what you face, you're already richer than you think, already more blessed than you act, already more loved than you sometimes feel. That 92-year-old woman had figured out the secret most people never learn. Happiness isn't about getting more, it's about seeing more. Seeing the beauty in the ordinary, seeing God's fingerprints in the everyday, seeing the gift wrapped inside the struggle. Gratitude isn't just a reaction, it's a decision. And it's a decision worth making every single day. Faith is the fuel that keeps you going when nothing else makes sense. That's what the 92-year-old woman told me. And when she said it, it wasn't from a place of theory. It was from a place of deep lived experience. Her voice didn't shake when she said it because her faith had been tested, pressed, and proven. She had walked through seasons where logic failed her, where plans fell apart, and where every answer seemed out of reach. But her faith held her together. She said, there were days I didn't know how it would work out, but I believed it would. And that belief was enough to take the next step. That kind of faith, the kind that holds on in the dark, is rare because we live in a world that demands certainty. People want guarantees, roadmaps, a sure thing. But faith isn't about seeing every step ahead. It's about trusting the one who's already been there. Her life was a living testimony to that. She had faced loss, deep, heart-wrenching loss. She had buried loved ones, walked through financial struggle, navigated health scares, and endured the kinds of storms that would shake most people to their core. And yet she said, every time I chose faith over fear, I got stronger. That's the power of it. Faith doesn't always change the situation. Sometimes it changes you in the middle of it. Faith is what makes you get up when life knocks you down. It's what keeps you speaking life when everything around you looks dead. It's what allows you to smile when the tears are still wet on your face, because you know that God is still working behind the scenes even when you can't see it. Faith doesn't mean you don't feel fear. It means you don't let fear have the final say. She reminded me that faith is active. It's not just a warm thought or a Sunday sermon. It's a choice you make on Monday when the bills are due and your heart is heavy. It's a decision to keep sowing seeds even when the ground looks dry. It's choosing to speak hope into your children's lives even when they're drifting. It's believing that God can redeem your pain, rewrite your story, and breathe life into what looked finished. And the most beautiful part is that faith multiplies. One act of faith today can unlock a lifetime of breakthrough. One mustard seed of belief, like Jesus said, can move mountains. That old woman lived with that kind of belief. Not flashy, not loud, but deep, steady, unwavering. Her faith lit up the room. Not because she had all the answers, but because she had anchored herself in the one who did. She said, my faith carried me when my strength ran out. And if there's one thing she taught me, is that we all need that kind of anchor. When the storms of life roll in, when the winds howl and the waves crash, your education, your title, your hustle, none of it will be enough. But your faith, that will keep you grounded, that will keep you moving, that will carry you through. Because in the end, faith isn't a crutch, it's a bridge. A bridge that carries you from where you are to where you're called to be. And the sooner you learn to walk by it, the sooner you'll find that even in the uncertainty, even in the waiting, you're never walking alone.